Our speaker today is Paul Henry. He's had a career doing woodworking, but he's 20 years as an instructor at Palomar. He taught design and history at Palomar. Many of the people I've talked to in the room have taken classes from him or are aware of his classes out there. So we're in for a treat today to hear from Paul Henry and about hide glue. Please welcome Paul Henry.
Am I on? Thank you, Dallas. Let me see if I can get up here. I thank all of you for being here. This is really terrific. I recognize a lot of faces out there, but I do have cataracts, so if I'm looking at you kind of funny, I may not recognize you. When people ask, this is my go-to glue in the shop. I work a lot with antiques, and so when you do that, you need to learn how to handle hide glue, because before World War II, if you said glue, this is what you meant. Everything was made that way, but it does take some setup, and there are times when that bottle of tight bond is just exactly what you want. Boom, you're done. This takes a bit of setup, and let me sort of walk through some of the tools that I think you will need. First, let me talk about the glue. And I'm going to be talking, when you talk about this hide glue, today there are two different types, really, of dry crystals or the liquid hide glue. I'm going to be talking mostly about this, so we start with this old brown glue. Some of you know Patrick Edwards. He has made this product available. If you walked into a True Value hardware store and you saw tight bond hide glue, it may have been sitting on the shelf for years, and it has a shelf life. Patrick dates every one of these. This one is good until January 28, and that is if you just leave it on the shelf. If you put it in the refrigerator, it'll probably last longer. So when I buy from him, I will buy a big one and a small one, decant it, and when I'm ready to use this, I kind of stick it in my pocket. The liquid stuff is in a gel kind of state, natural. You need to warm it up. Not 150 degrees as you would the crystals, but it needs to be at least like a good hot tub, 103, something like that, and it flows easily. Both types have the same properties that I'm after: incredible bond strength, clarity, and reversibility. If you don't like what you did, you warm it up to 150 degrees, it becomes liquid, and you can take it apart. This is how you get antiques apart. So there's terrific advantages. I will use this if the other advantage with the liquid is the open time. About 20 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. So if you're gluing together a chair, and you've got to wrestle this stuff together, Curtis Buchanan, the great Windsor chair maker, calls this chiropractic, where you're trying to wrestle these legs and arms together. And Windsor chairs are really done with some tension involved. So you got to kind of whack it together and straighten it out on the bench. This gives you that kind of time. It doesn't set up, well, there's another disadvantage, I suppose, 24 hours. So you have to plan ahead. And if you're going to be using it, you have to plan ahead. And, say a bend lamination, perfect for bend laminations, because you have lots of time to get that thing into the position you want it. But if it's under pressure, 24 hours might not be enough. Go a couple of days. You do need to plan ahead. Mostly what I want to talk about today is the crystal style. Crystals. There's actually a couple of different types. This is it looks like raw sugar. It's about that consistency. And you can buy this almost anywhere. Patrick Edwards sells this. If you're going to buy the liquid, by the way, you can buy it from Woodcraft, you can buy it from anywhere. But buy it from Patrick right here in town. Keep the money in San Diego. He's providing a great service. This stuff you can buy anywhere too. And if you go to the Milligan and Higgins website, if you see, I have the last slide on my presentation. I'm going to leave it up, and it has a lot of this information. You can take a photo of it. Milligan and Higgins is a company in Midwest somewhere that basically renders all of the hides and makes hide glue. And if you go to their website, you'll see numerous products that this is made out of. You know, if you take a vitamin B capsule, it's probably hide glue in the capsule. It is edible. It's a protein based, right? So it's non-toxic. If you were really starving, you could eat some. I don't know how you digest it, but anyway. So I am looking at this glue now. Let me just walk through some of the tools that I think you're going to need. Number one is the glue pot. This is still available. I guess it's everything's $100 and something these days. And I tried when I first started working with it to use one of these little Proctor Silex kind of heat up your soup things, and it works okay sometimes. It has to be around 150 degrees, and that Proctor Silex would sometimes be less, sometimes be more, and it was frustrating. This holds it at 150 degrees completely, and although it comes in two parts, the top part is for the glue, and actually if you go to Patrick Edwards' shop, you should take a photo of his glue pot. It is gorgeous, because he throws the glue directly into the top, and it builds up around the edges, and you can break off the glue that's around the edges and stick it back into the pot, and it melts, and it becomes perfectly viable again. But I use a little jar of it inside because it deprives you of one of your great assets, is hot water. You have hot water running around this, and that's quite usable. Glue brushes may not be important, but I keep aliphatic and hide glue brushes separate. If you're working with aliphatic, any glue brush that you use, you may wash it off, but you know that the heel of that brush is going to have some glue in it, right? And it builds up over time. And if you use that brush in the hot water, you're going to get this white boogery snot that's the aliphatic glue, and it gets a mess. With these glue brushes, yes, it gets into the heel of the brush as well. But when you warm it back up, it becomes liquid. And the brush is just as supple as when it first started. I get these from Torrington Brush Company, and this is a bridled brush. It has this little wire going around it that keeps the bristles stiff. To a point, they're very, very flexible. I have a couple examples of them over here, and then another one that I have here. I mark all of them with like an orange tape or something on the back so I can remember that this is a hide glue brush, and I formulated this one to a tight point so that I can get into fine places. The surface that you're working on, the thing that you're going to glue onto, should be primed. If it's bare wood, that glue is going to suck into the wood, starving the glue joint, and you're going to have a failure. So just like you're priming a wall, gypsum wall, and you want to put wallpaper up, you have to prime the wall first so that the glue stays. So I primed this board. Let me back this off. Baltic birch plywood. I usually use that as the core. I don't really like MDF. I'm not sure of its archival product possibilities. There is a new MDF I have heard that is waterproof and is stronger and more archivally consistent. Still, I like Baltic birch. I took some old glue and I mixed 1 part glue with about 6 or 7 parts of hot water, and then used that to brush onto here. It raises the grain. You wait for it to dry. Sand it slightly. If you don't think you got enough primer on there, do it again. This one was primed twice and is now ready for service. Oop, hold on a second. To put it on, the tradition is using a veneer hammer. It's not really a hammer. It's more like a squeegee. And the edge of it is traditionally bronze because it doesn't react with moisture. You know, it can't be steel, it can't be iron, because it's going to react with the moisture and the heat, and it's going to rust. So bronze is typical. I made my first one with an aluminum, and the problem with that is if you drop it on the floor, it's going to get a little ding, and then you use it on the wood, you're going to scratch the wood. This one is made with brass. Works just fine, and if you're careful with it, you won't get scratches on it. It's used like a squeegee to push things around and get the glue out of the bottom of the veneer, because you want no glue in between, just the wood to wood and that little thin bit of glue in between. That's typically what you use, but if you look at these two demos that I have here, I don't think you can do this kind of veneering with aliphatic. This hide glue does things that aliphatic simply can't. And if you're working with a three-dimensional curves, like the French piece here, I use these little squeegee things. They do just about the same thing that this guy does. And if you're using small pieces, as I typically am, these are plenty. This is going to work just fine. If you're working with a larger sheet, and I think the largest thing I ever did was 24 by 48, a 4-piece match, and you use a larger hammer for that because you need to work fairly quickly. Quickly is the name of the game with this one, because when the first thing that I do is I proof the glue. And this was one of my favorite demos at Palomar, because I would always have people come up and proof the glue with me. I'd paint their fingers. And then you sit and you wait. It's warm, it's very slippery, until it's not slippery anymore. And all of a sudden it starts to, and I'm testing it now. This is actually a pretty slow batch. When you're mixing this, it tells you to mix 1 pound of glue with 1 liter of water or something like that. You've got pounds, you got liter. What are you supposed to do? So I measured out spoons of the whole pound and then measured out spoons of the liter. And it turns out it's 1 part glue, 2 parts water. Depending on your glue, there's actually a pearl glue that a spoonful doesn't have quite as much as the spoonful of the granules, so you need to adjust. But if it's granules you're working with, it's roughly 2 to 1. 1.75 to 2.5, you've got a range. The loose, I mean, if you have more water in it, if it's liquidy, it's actually a quicker set, believe it or not. This one is running kind of slow. So I'm feeling it now, it's getting kind of sticky. And in classes, I would say, when it starts to get sticky, push your fingers together as hard as you can, and then relax, and you'll realize the bond strength that this glue has. I mean, it will hold anything to you. So that's about the amount of time, from the point that I put it on my finger to about now, is how much time you've got to put that glue, to get that piece of veneer down. Now, if you're starting on a day like this, it's maybe not so cold. I feel the piece, and if it feels at all cold, you have to heat it up. And I just do it to warm up the surface and the piece of veneer. And when it feels kind of, can you get in on this? I'm going to stick this piece of veneer right down on this board right here somewhere. And when I was doing this in class, I said, don't worry about accuracy. What I'm interested in is getting you to learn how to handle the glue. All right, now this is pretty warm. Let's see if I can get my glasses on here too. Okay. Let me just set this hair out there. You got a good view here? All right. Again, I'm not going to worry too much about accuracy here. You put the glue on. What I'm kind of doing is warm. The glue is warm. I'm kind of warming the surface. Put your piece of veneer face down into that so that you can rub the back. Get it glued on the back. Flip it over. What happens when you touch moisture to a piece of veneer? It's going to start to curl. So you need to put moisture on both sides of the piece. Lay it in place. And then basically squeegee out all of the glue around it. pushing it down. Sometimes you can hear it sort of crackling underneath. That's as you're pushing the glue out. There, done. Get some coffee and we're done. That really is it. It is that fast. It's not, it adheres by cooling, not by drying. So you lay this piece on. Let's lay another piece right next to it. If you're working sequentially, as I am here, and the thing stays fairly warm, you're going to be fine. If you're going to go get lunch or something, you need to clean up the edge. I like to use a little piece of, this is a Formica sample, with a very sharp corner. Get rid of the glue on that edge. If you leave it there, it's going to harden, and it hardens, hide glue hardens to a glass-like consistency. And if you tried to chip away that glue, it'll come up and hit you in the eye, no doubt, but it'll also take a piece of wood with it and make a mess. So if you're going to wait and do it after lunch, clean that corner up so that you got a nice square edge. Then you can come back to it later and lay another piece right next to it. Now, you don't have to worry about getting sloppy with hide glue. Try this with aliphatic, and you're going to get a white blob that's going to mess up the finish. One of the features of hide glue is its clarity. So that all the glue on the top surface will not disturb the finishing process. It's clear, straight through, believe it or not. You don't want puddles of glue on the top, so I'm cleaning off. And then you will, of course, you sand, and then it's ready for finish. And if you don't like what you just did, you can heat it up and take it off. I'm going to throw this last piece on just because I want to finish the job here. Let me back up here and talk about the tools to make the veneer. This has to be one of the cheapest tools on the woodworker's market. I can't believe that Lee Nielsen hasn't figured out a way to charge you $150 for this thing. But you know that this tool, it's square on this side, and then the teeth are sharpened on this side. And so if you're going to take a piece of veneer, I have this wonderful little tool. It's called a stick. And on one side of it, it is abrasive. The abrasive holds the piece of wood, the veneer down, and the edge allows you to cut. Now, because this cut is angled and this cut is square, I always mark on the bottom where the square edge is. Because you're going to lose these things and you say, wait a minute, which is the square edge? I always mark it on the glue side so that it gets buried when you lay it down, right? If you don't like what you just did with this and you need to adjust it slightly, this stick is also a way to adjust that edge. If you don't like the way these corners are quite matching, you need to hoop it a little bit. It's very easy to lay this in, tip it a little bit, clean that thing up, and then you're ready to go. Very handy little tool. It's called a stick. All right, this has cooled sufficiently, so I'm going to warm it back up and lay this guy. That's about right. So when the class at Palomar was doing this, it ends up looking kind of like a crazy quilt. You could put all kinds of pieces together, and the students had terrific fun laying these things in. So you could cut these veneers, tape them together, and then glue them down. Or you could fit them together and just glue it entirely. Saves time. It's done. Of course, we can't deal with it until it's dry. Even though it's stuck together, it's not usable until it's dry enough to cut with. So, if you'll pardon me a minute. Then, the other thing that I want to talk about is its reversibility. So, if you take this piece here that I put on yesterday and add a little water. So this is what we call a burn-in knife. Some people working with shellac sticks or other wax sticks. This is meant to take the place of this. And this is called a burn-in knife. I don't know, if you don't have one of these, this is a pretty cheap thing too. It's ergonomically beautiful. It's got a nice curve to it. The point is sharp enough to cut tape, or you can burnish tape, or you can open a can of putty, put the putty exactly where you want it. It's a terrific little tool, and I use it for many things. This is an electric version of that, and this is called hard wax. This is a wax. It's very tough, and when you heat it up, it flows like water, and it is my go-to for filling in larger cracks rather than the putty. And you use it with this tool here. So I'm just going to put a little water on this because water is what's going to transfer the heat. This burn-in knife, it's kind of like a soldering iron, and it will continually get hot. So I plug it into this little gizmo that I made with a rheostat, so that I can cut the electricity to it a little bit, and it doesn't get blistering hot, but it needs to be hot enough to produce steam. Now this usually works unless you're giving a demo. Doesn't seem quite hot enough. Let me pump that up a touch. So when, I think his name was Reisener, the last ébéniste du roi for the old regime, he survived the French Revolution, and the rest of his career was spent taking the emblem of the king off of the furniture and replacing it with bowls of fruit and things. And he did it by warming up just like this. It's not going to come up. Well, you get the concept in here, right? It's just not, it's not lifting off the way I was hoping. I also have an iron, what is now an old iron, for larger surfaces to be able to move things around. Let's pretend that worked. It does work. Another thing that this hide glue is good for, it's for edge banding. See if I can get this in here to get this down. I made these two pieces. If you're going to put veneer into cross-banding on a veneered surface, I've prepared this edge so that it is just exactly a veneer thickness lower, but then I cut a little bit deeper into the edge so that I can inlay veneer strips here. So let's see if I can get this to work. Up, up. It is a nice warm day in San Diego, but you know, I probably could use the heat gun on this guy here too, but it tends to dry rather than just heat. And then you're going to have a problem if it's well, here you go. I'm ruining the piece of wood, but it comes off and you can clean the surface. That's not bad. All right. Warm this up a bit. Now I'll use the thinner brush on this. First on the, wipe these down. I love that you can do this and not worry about getting glue all over and having it be sloppy. It is sloppy. And I can feel how sticky it is already. This is really coming together quickly. Ooh, yeah. Just like that. All right, and then I take that tool and scrape the edge so that I've got a nice square edge to run up against. And again, I'm not going to worry so much about whether this is a perfect, accurate fit. What I want to do is show you how it works. So you're working with this, and I get to a certain point. Oh boy, that's down already. Let's make sure we get it square across. Push it into the wall. Now, if you're working with burly veneer, this is actually a really handy thing. So let me grab that. So when you're working with burls like this, you can actually, when the burl gets warm and wet, it's kind of like a sponge. And you can push it around and really push that veneer into the corner where you want it to go. I don't know if I can get my PowerPoint up yet, but so I wrote an article for Woodwork magazine back, I forget what year it was, 2008, about how to build one of these, how to make the room and leg. I've seen so many ways of trying to put the glue, or the leg, and gluing it onto the main case. But if you make it in one piece and then build the case off of it, you get maximum strength. The only trick is you have to veneer the leg. And this is how he did it, with hide glue, pushing it around. You're not going to be able to see this, but this first piece that I put on, I was worried about getting this edge close. And it hangs over this side, it's no problem. Getting it down, and I ran it to about here. And then after it's set, I cut from here to here on an angle, and removed that small piece, and then laid another one in. I'd love to be able to show the PowerPoint here. Can I get that up? Oh, you're up, good. So there's just a quick little gallery of little things that I have made using this technique. So the French piece especially, when you're working with three-dimensional curves, you can't glue it up on a table and then expect it to lay it on. It's not going to work. So I have to put it on one piece at a time. And I've made these little bud vases. And here's what I was going to show you. This was the sample that I made for this piece. And I have this naked picture of the room and leg. This is before it was all veneered. There's a little drawer on the top here. I made a little plywood box and fit a drawer into it, and then inlaid the box into the top of the case and made that. So here's the last piece of veneer going on to the original one. And I do have, yeah, here it is. Laying that first veneer on, it's hard to see, I suppose, cutting the edge, removing that edge, and then finding another piece that's approximately the same coloration, finding it in and laying it in. You can't see it. You simply can't see the glue joint there. And if you're working with something weird like this, and you have to put the veneer on to a curved, compound curved surface, there's really only a couple ways to do it. You're not going to do it with a clamp and a caul trying to get that veneer on. That would be kind of ridiculous. And if you're doing things like this, I lay up where I want the veneers to go, cut them, you lay the piece in, get a good fit, cut the top, glue it on, move around. There's 4 sides, so by the time you get to the 4th side, the first side's already dry, and you're ready to move on. On the top for that particular piece, I could have done the standard, put the veneers together with tape and then glue it down because it's flat. But I figured as long as you're trying to fit the pieces together, why not just glue them in and get it done with? So I built this top, which you really can't see quite so much, out to a certain point where I knew that there's a piece of 5/8 inch MDF there with the shape that I want. And I use an 1/8 inch router bit that is a 1/16 or a 3/32 cutter. And I mount it into the Dremel, and I can run it directly onto the edge of that MDF. The cutter is smaller than the shaft, 1/8 inch shaft, and you can push it right around and cut that groove, and then use this technique to remove those pieces. It's just as easy as that, right? But when they're moving, and then you can edge band on this curve all the way around to the outside and get that sort of a effect. Now on a flat surface, you know that that's fairly easy. What I love about this hide glue is that you can be working compound curves, like that French piece there. I don't see any other way to do that. Hide glue is the way to do it, and my hands are very sticky at this point. And I'm here for any questions. I don't know, you have any questions from right now? Because there is what I've got for you. Yeah, man. Yeah, you got
If you are using veneer tape to glue your pieces together, are you prepping them before you then put glue on it and put it to your substrate?
I don't generally use veneer tape at this point. You know, I'm putting the pieces together one piece at a time. If I was going to try to put them together dry, I would use the veneer tape to hold it. What happens though is the veneer tape is hide glue, right? And if you heat it up and you're working with moisture, that tape may just loosen. So I don't see the advantage of taping anything if you're using hide glue. The advantage is that you can stick these things together and not have to use tape. You're done.
If you got other questions, raise your hand and we'll bring the mic around so you can hear the question.
So I guess you can make hide glue out of different hides, lamb, sheep,
Yes.
goat, cow, horse, and so forth.
Yeah.
Do they have different properties?
Yes. Mostly what we're talking about here is cow, I suspect. There may be a horse or two. If you're working with like bookbinders, leather workers, they may want something a little more refined, so there's a rabbit skin glue that typically they will use. It's I've never used it, frankly. It's more expensive, and there's lots of different ways of using this, too. This is what they call the 192 glue strength, gram strength. There is a higher gram strength glue that's usable for wood, and for certain applications in musical instruments, like putting on the bridge of a guitar or certain adhesions. you might want the higher gram strength, but it is more finicky. It sets a lot quicker. And so for general woodworking purposes, the 192 gram strength cow is probably fine. If you're a bookbinder and paper needs to have a little bit different more type of glue on it than the rabbit skin glue.
Hang on. I'm coming.
Can I go ahead? So when you're doing the diamonds, I'm over here on the. When you're doing the diamonds on the curved surface, do you have to like curve the edges for them to meet up, or do you just keep the edges straight and you have kind
Yes,
of a gap?
it depends on where it's going. So obviously, this looks like a straight line, but the piece of veneer that goes on had a curve to it. It's just the way it lays up. For the little diamonds, I think they are all straight on the edge. There's no reason to curve them. So straight lines on the bottoms of the diamonds, and they just lay up as you're moving across the surface. They will simply lay up straight on. So no, you don't have to curve the edges. There's also a couple of really cute tricks here. Years ago, I was working on a French table. It was a 19th century version of a 18th century whatever, and it had all these fruit things carved into the edges, and when I took it apart, I realized that the apron was not vertical, but tipped at about a 15 degrees. You can see that this is coming in at a 15-degree angle. That does a couple of things. So if it's coming up at an angle, this surface it comes right into line, and you can continue that surface around. But it also does another thing, is it brings out the bottom out to the front edge of that cabriole leg. If you've made a cabriole leg, anyone? Yes? You've probably also made a little transition block. Those little transition blocks get lost. I've replaced many of them. And then it's kind of a pain to have that transition block to bring the front edge of the cabriole leg into the apron, right? That's what it's for. If you do it this way, there's no transition block. The French figured out a way to bring it out so that you get a very matched curve, and that it also gives you a fair amount of meat to carve up here if you want to put a bowl of fruit or whatever this is. And that's why a lot of the pieces that I've done that have that shape, this fan shape, you can tuck the veneers into it, and it looks like, people look at it and say, how did you do that? You know, it's mysterious until it becomes obvious.
You have a slide with your supplies. You mentioned that you had a list of where you buy your supplies.
How about that? The article that I wrote about how to make this torpedo leg is in Woodwork magazine, but you can go to my website, and on the, I think it's the contact page or something, it has a link to how to make this leg. I saw a show of Ruhlman's furniture at the Metropolitan Museum in New York, and it was a complete room full of his furniture. It was gorgeous. And then in one particular piece, I could see that the case was coming off here, but I could see this little tell line that over the years the pieces had moved slightly underneath, and you could see where the seam was. And I thought, that's how he did it. It was one whole thing, not this little piece here, but a whole thing. So I ran back to the shop and I made this. And then I made another one, and of course I had to put a little drawer in it. But with the hide glue, you can do really tricky stuff with inlays, beads, and don't worry about getting it sloppy, right? So it finishes up perfectly. I love this stuff.
I'm not familiar with high glue. How do you clean up? Is it just hot water and soap? Or?
Just hot water and soap, yeah.
Perfect.
And in a class setting, this glue pot, I always take the cord and put it in the vise tighten it up a little bit so that as you're walking along, you're not, because if this tips over onto a cold concrete floor, it really makes a mess. Don't ask me how I know, but I know this.
One last question. Anybody? No last questions. That's because you did a perfect job of
I've
presenting.
answered all your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Great presentation.